Hey everyone, Alan here. Thanks so much for listening to the PT on Ice Daily Show. We hope your Monday and your week is off to a great start. Just want to take a few brief seconds and talk about Jane. Jane is our favorite practice management software, but it's much more than just an EMR. It features online booking and scheduling, electronic charting, and one-on-one telehealth capabilities, all inside the same convenient piece of software. In addition to all those great tools, you get access to their online community where you can share templates for evals and notes, speeding up your charting and making your practice that much more efficient. Jane's support team is standing by to help you make the transition, whether you are brand new to practice ownership or you've been practicing for a while and you're looking to make the switch from whatever EMR you are currently using. You can learn more about Jane at jane.app/physicaltherapy and use ICE's promotion code ICEPT1MO for a 1-month free grace period to help you in your transition. We hope you enjoy today's episode of the PT on Ice Daily Show.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt. I am one of two lead faculty in clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. We have two courses in our pelvic division. We have our 8-week online course, where our next female athlete course is getting started February 28th. And then we have our live course where the inaugural course is in Hendersonville. That course is actually sold out. So the next chance you have to get into our live internal pelvic course for the female athlete is in March in Greenville. If you are heading down to CSM, I will be there. I am talking about Valsalva and holding your breath with lifting in the postpartum population on Thursday. It's been a little bit of a jumble with the stuff going on with COVID. So I'm not exactly sure what time on Thursday. I will keep you posted. I'm going to post about it today. And then we're at 8 a.m. in the Jerry division talking about how tandem standing is the ankle pump of balance training. If you are going to be at CSM and you are looking to get a workout in, iDry Needle and the Institute of Clinical Excellence have partnered up to do a 5 a.m. workout. It's going to be a partner workout. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's at Unchained Fitness. It is free to anybody who is looking to practice what they preach and use that fitness forward approach, including especially at a conference where I feel so blocked because I'm sitting listening to presentations and not moving around as much as I normally would. So if you are interested, we've posted about it on all our social media channels, or you can reach out to myself or Paul at iDry Needle and we can give you the deets. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about birth stories. This was probably about 18 months ago. Alexis did a wonderful podcast talking about how she navigates the pelvic health space, not having had children. There is this untold kind of understanding when you've gone through something so transformative like birth. And all the struggles that come with parenting and then parenting again, that there's a lot of pelvic PTs who haven't had children who sometimes feel a little bit awkward or uncomfortable making recommendations about what to do when they don't have that frame of reference. Sometimes that can be quite kind of on ourselves, like this almost imposter syndrome, because as an orthopedic therapist, I haven't had every injury, and because I haven't had an ACL rupture doesn't mean that I don't feel like I can make recommendations about an ACL rupture. But the pelvic health space just hits different for some reason. And so I want to talk about the other side of that coin and how, because birth and because labor is so transformative, that we are actually biased as well. And we need to think about that and reflect on that bias. So when we think about going into the pelvic health space, over and over and over again, I hear the same story. I had a really terrible experience, or I had a really rough time during pregnancy and into postpartum. And the inevitable sentence, I wish somebody would have told me X, Y, or Z. And I went into the pelvic health space because I didn't want another mom to feel like that. And I wanted to be that support for them. I think that is a wonderful reason to go into the pelvic health space. But what can happen is, because if you had a really negative experience, you remember that viscerally, right? Like you remember what it feels like to give birth, right? Something like that pain, that sharp awareness of the pain of labor starts to go away, but your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions around birth do not. right? All the things around your pregnancy, you do not forget those moments. Like it can be years and years and years, and you still remember that feeling because it's just so life changing. And so when we're starting to make recommendations, it is not unrealistic to think that that could bias your perception. Because in your mind, whether you're realizing it or not, you're saying, I remember how I felt at 16 weeks postpartum. I want to make sure that I am protecting my client because I remember that thought process. I'm going to make recommendations so that what happened to me doesn't happen to her or doesn't happen to them. And that's kind of a part of evidence informed practice, right? We have that anecdotal piece. However, how you feel during your labor and delivery in your postpartum journey may not be how your client feels in both directions. This kind of came front of mind to me because I've had people see my postpartum. I went back to exercise early postpartum with both my kids. And I have a lot of people say to me, well, Christina, you had an uncomplicated birth. Like you didn't have anything wrong, which is why you can do that. Not everybody is like that. And granted, my experience was relatively uncomplicated. However, I had gestational hypertension with my first. I was induced. I had a 2nd-degree tear. I was giving birth in COVID with my second child, and I had, to walk while I was in transition down a hospital. And I have prolapse from having 2 unmedicated vaginal deliveries, and medicated or not. But so I have stuff from a pelvic health perspective that has gone on with me in my return. As an athlete, I would never expect for me to be pushing the limits of my performance and not having aches and pains come up. As a postpartum athlete, I would never expect myself to be pushing to the edge of my performance and not experience some pelvic health complaints. However, it brings up a really interesting vein that tends to happen, and it's this comparison game, right? We think about this in the social media or influencer space where I'm comparing my journey to your journey, or I'm seeing the highlight reel on social media and I feel less than, or I feel like I'm comparing to, or I'm really having to battle with some of these thought viruses that are coming into my mind. But it's interesting because it can also trickle in to our postpartum experience, right? For me, exercise was super important. I understand that my bias is that movement trumps not moving only always. And I can want to find, even if it's 5 minutes with a baby on the floor, I want to find something that's going to help me move. It helps my mental health. It makes me feel better physically. It makes me feel like I show up better for motherhood. But I also understand that that is not every person. And for some people, exercise is on the very low end of their priorities, right? I have never experienced multiple births. I have not experienced higher level OASIS level injuries. I've never had a C-section. So all of those experiences are outside of my domain, but clinically, I understand the healing process. And as a clinician who has worked with hundreds of people, I have seen now this breadth and depth of experience to try and meet a person where they're at. But what can happen sometimes is if we have had a negative experience, or we went back too fast and experienced public health complaints and we have a really negative association with that, it can trickle into our language, whether we think so or not. And the other way around. If I had a really easy experience, I may be pushing my clients more than they're ready to be pushed because, again, my experience has trickled into my language, has made me the person that I am today, has transformed me in so many different ways. And I have to be aware of that so that if I have a client who wants to slow down her recovery versus what, I would think her body is ready for, I'm going to respect that. If I have a client who I think maybe should slow down a little bit, but I'm not in her body and I don't understand what they are experiencing, then I'm going to remove barriers, give them guideposts, and allow them to progress from a pelvic health perspective to wherever they want to be or however fast they want to get there. And sometimes I always talk about this analogy, like when we're in any PT, but in the pelvic health space, speaking to this, we're in the passenger seat, right? So when we have our recommendations, we may be a bit more forceful with some of these recommendations, but we're not going to be able to tell our client to turn left or right. A lot of times this happens in the pelvic health space where I'm getting asked for referrals because a person has gone to pelvic health. They've said, oh, never ever hold your breath. Hence my CSM presentation this week. And they're saying, well, I want to get back to CrossFit, or I'm a national level weightlifter. Like, of course I'm going to be Valsalving. Of course I'm going to be trying to get back to my weightlifting belt. Do you have any recommendation of somebody who can come alongside me? And, that can be a combination of factors, but oftentimes, sometimes it can be that, we don't ourselves don't feel very good performing a Valsalva. And so we don't really recommend doing that type of thing with our pelvic clients. So what can we do about this? This is kind of like an interesting conversation because it's on the other side of that coin for clinicians who haven't had children or feeling a bit of imposter syndrome. We can probably maybe feel imposter syndrome as well as parents who maybe didn't go back to exercise as fast as you're seeing some of your other clients, and it can kind of hit on that insecurity. Or you can have gone back to exercise really early, and then you're feeling like you're having a lack of jive or not helping with your therapeutic alliance for somebody who just really is not in the headspace to be getting there, and we have to respect that. So how do we approach this? So the first thing is to reflect on your own motherhood journeys, right? So think about your first babies, maybe your only baby, maybe your second baby, your third baby, your fourth baby, however many children you've had. Reflect on those pregnancies. Reflect on your birth experience and reflect on where your bias lies. Because sometimes we just don't think about it. We don't think about the fact that, these experiences change our life forever. When you become a parent, all of a sudden your life changes, and it doesn't matter if it's your first time becoming a parent or your fourth time, your life changes forever. And what your feelings and emotions are around that birth experience, right? There's a statistic, I'm not exactly sure the number, but between like 20 and 30%, something like that, don't quote me, of females during labor and delivery experience some emotional trauma that could be classified under that PTSD diagnosis. And that would be a really strong catalyst for wanting to be involved in advocating for empowered birth stories, right? So reflect on that. Reflect on how that might show up. So that's number one. Try and just think about your birth stories. Feel what's happening in your body. Is your heart rate jumping? Are you feeling the sense of calm and serene? Are you kind of half smiling, thinking about your labor story? Are you feeling guilty because you're not smiling when you're thinking about your labor story? All these emotions, to sit in them and understand where that might be coming from. That's number one. And number two is reflect on your current caseload. Are they very close or in line with how you felt? Are you thinking about their stories and thinking about your story and how they connect together? Or are you recognizing where your bias is, but allowing this person to hold space in your treatment room, even if their approach to their postpartum journey is not your approach to your postpartum journey, right? Maybe they have a bit more fear-focused lens where they're experiencing their postpartum journey, and we're trying to tackle that a little bit, but we need to respect where they're at. Saying you don't need to be afraid is not the way to get over some of those postpartum fears. And are we being maybe a bit too forceful when it comes to embarking our bias, or not embarking, translating our bias, maybe is the right word, onto that person, right? Because we want to connect with our clients. One of the easiest ways to connect is shared and lived experiences, but your shared and lived experience around motherhood might be very different than somebody else's. And I think sometimes in the exercise space, when the therapist is a little bit more fearful and the client is feeling really good and wanting to push, by constantly trying to hold them back, we may actually be introducing fear-focused language that is not necessary. And instead, we say, like, I would probably wait until 12 weeks to start running, for example. If you are feeling good, here is some guideposts. Let's get you on a very slow progression. So you're meeting your client where they're at. You're allowing them to hold space for what is feeling good for their journey, but you're giving them that progression that you feel comfortable with as well, so that they're able to feel like you're listening to them. You're acknowledging that, maybe you didn't feel good until like 6 months postpartum because of some of the injuries that you had during your birth. And so you're feeling a little, like you just get this like uneasiness when you're thinking about somebody going to run at 8 weeks because you remember how your pelvis felt at 8 weeks postpartum. Acknowledging that, but acknowledge that your experience isn't their experience, and that even within a person, how they felt coming back from their first pregnancy may feel very different than their second. And so all these things we can kind of think about and then reflect on where our headspace is, and then try to acknowledge that when it comes to how we are coming together with our clients during these treatment sessions, how we can come alongside them and recognize, that bias isn't bad. It influences us. And sometimes that is a great way to connect, but sometimes it can be a way that we're kind of instilling our own thoughts and beliefs on our client when they may not share those thoughts and beliefs. So something to be thinking about on the other side of the pendulum. Let me know, did you get into pelvic health because of your own negative experiences? Was it something that just sparked your interest? And if it was something that was kind of sparked by, a negative experience, or you wish you would have known in the postpartum space, how have you reflected on some of those experiences, some of those biases, to make sure that maybe you're not instilling some of that fear or some of that bias into your clients? I would love to know. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them below on the Instagram TV or the YouTube channel. If you are at CSM, come and say hi to me. Thursday, Valsalva for the postpartum female, and Friday, tandem standing is the ankle palm balance training. If you're an early riser, I am not, but I am going to be running the CSM WOD with Paul and Dustin. It's going to be a fun partner workout. We are going to get after it really early and then head into a conference center for the rest of the day. And yeah, I hope to see you all there. So make sure you message me if you're going to be around, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.